employees. I don't know where that will go. This now is where the rubber meets the road. And so the Appropriations Committee has been talking about this and has been working towards where they can cut. If Representative Carson's recovering from influenza A, and it's been quite a tenure. The last time we did this is when that's the day he came down with it. Yeah, so he's been pretty sick. So we don't have our in-house approach guy here, and if we did, we might have clear answers. But I do know that they're talking about it, and they're already going through to see where they can trim it. But tax increase, no. In fact, Wednesday is crossover day, so any bills that are initiated in either chamber have to be out of that chamber by the end of business on Wednesday.
And really, she said it best. There won't be tax increases. As far as cuts, it's too early to say where those will be, if there have to be some. I mean, there obviously will be something somewhere, but I don't think you're going to see them in the services or in programs that affect people. It'll be in more departments and stuff like that, and overhead, I would think. But again, to find 27 million or more in those kind of cuts, it could be challenging. But don't freak out just yet. I don't think we're going to have to do too many major deep cuts like we did in the years past.
I'll add one thing. I don't think that Spearfish Canyon idea, I think that's probably dead on arrival. It hasn't arrived yet. It's already dead? Oh, there you go.
Great. Thank you. Additional questions?
Hi, Steve Simpson. Tony, you brought up that marriage increase and $30 going toward the domestic abuse program. Since that increase is going to something besides the cost of issuing the marriage license, should that be considered a tax instead of a fee, and thereby requiring a 2/3 vote to pass? Thank you.
Steve, I'm not following what you're saying exactly, because that's been in existence forever. So I do not know when it was passed. Our $40 fee, I do know, I think hasn't been raised since 1991 or 93. So when you go to get a marriage license, the $40 that you pay, 30 of that goes to domestic abuse. So if that was voted on with a 2/3 vote, I don't know.
It wasn't. It was passed
idea.
by a majority. So that's my question, because $30 of the $20 of that increase, is going towards another purpose besides issuing marriage license.
Sure.
So that is a tax and not a fee.
Sure.
So that $20 increase should require a 2/3 vote, because it is indeed a tax increase.
Yeah, well,
Thank
you know what? That's not a bunny trail I'm going down right now, because we got bigger fish to fry than that.
I mean, there was a bill that was brought up this year having to do with the marriage licenses, and what it did, it raised it from it raised it from $40 to $60, but then it offered a $20 decrease if you got marriage counseling. I didn't see the point in raising the fee to begin with, so I voted against the bill, and because most churches require marriage counseling if you get married there, but marriage counseling isn't something the state needs to be mandating or something like that. So I voted against that bill just because it was of that fee increase of $20. So.
And I'll follow up on that, that when there's a judge on the Senate side that brought that bill to me, he had not spoken. Fact of the matter was, he didn't even know who issued that certificate in the courthouse. And then he didn't know, he hadn't talked to them. And then he couldn't answer how the person who was selling it would actually know this was a legitimate certificate of counseling. And so the whole thing was really quite a mess, but it made it through the Senate. It made it over to committee and got killed pretty handily in House committee yesterday.
Great, thank you very much. Additional questions?
Alicia Vincent, Davidson County. I have a question about Senate Bill 149. I just want to hear some perspective on why you think adding the protections for the ability for religious groups or religious child placement agencies in their adoption placement or foster care placement is necessary. What was some language? What was some of the reasons that went through your committee specifically, Josh? And would like to hear some arguments for or against that, and the ways that you're landing on that particular bill.
149 is really consistent with how the state has been operating for decades. With the private agencies, there's basically 2 or 3 religious organizations that do adoption and foster care. They do not receive state dollars to do the adoptions and foster care. They are self-funded in those areas. This bill would simply protect them from having to violate their deeply held religious beliefs. It doesn't prohibit anyone from adopting. If some people come to these agencies and want to adopt, and these agencies would feel it would violate their beliefs to work with them, they do forward them on to an agency that will work with them. So no one is prohibited from adopting. This simply puts into law protection for them from having to violate their religious beliefs. We've seen it in other states, and that's where this came from. It was brought up that people were going with the purpose of being denied. They would sue them and try to shut down these religious organizations. And then we would, if that would happen here, we would lose 2 major players in that game. Again, does it prohibit anyone from adopting? There's over 1,900 lawyers in this state that do adoptions for anyone who wants to. So I'm just seeing this as a religious protection for these very few organizations that do this.
Well, I'm a no on that one, and I get what Josh is saying, and I understand some of the reasonings, but my reasoning for no, outside of the fact that I just don't agree with it, is that in South Dakota, if you're a florist or a baker or whatever you are, and you don't want to do business with somebody, you don't have to. You can tell them like the color of your eyes. You don't have to do business with anybody that you don't want to. I don't know if this falls into that category because I haven't had a chance to follow that back, but my inclination is to think that protection already exists. So until somebody can tell me that it doesn't, then I'm a no on it. It hasn't come to our side yet. In fact, hasn't even been discussed much because we're down to the wire now trying to get our bills that are dealing with lobbyists and finance and those sorts of things over to the other side.
Great, thank you. Additional questions?
This will be a long hour, guys.
What's controversy? What can we talk about?
Okay.
Hey, I know, we can talk about, I talked about the one that you don't have to get a concealed carry permit. There's another bill, and this one, I think is the one that the governor said that he would veto also. This would allow for enhanced concealed carry in the Capitol. In South Dakota, you cannot have concealed carry of any nature in a courthouse for obvious reasons. There's a lot of tempers and what have you that goes on, and as one attorney said, it's like adding gasoline to a fire. The Capitol is a courthouse. The Supreme Court, the ultimate court in South Dakota, meets on the 2nd floor. So the enhanced concealed carry, you actually have a fair amount of training, but I'm not sure how intense the training is. I think Josh would have a better handle on that. So the goal was that you could carry, and if you had an enhanced concealed carry, you could carry in the court, you could carry in the Capitol, except when court was in session. So I don't know who would check that. I don't know how that would work. We're told that some of the constitutional officers don't feel as safe during the rest of the years when we're there because we have quite a lot of security, both in uniform and in regular street attire, and we have dogs that are there quite regularly. So I mean, I've never felt threatened in the least there, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There are legislators that I don't think should be carrying, and one in particular who has a violent temper that you just don't know where it's going to go. So I feel very comfortable knowing who's got the guns and where they are, and that they could control the situation. So that one will have quite a bit of discussion because we have a lot of West River folks and folks that will say, it's a Second Amendment right. I don't think we should have guns in courthouses, period. So.
Well, this will be a good topic for our debate because, as you probably know, my philosophy is bad people do bad things. Doesn't matter what kind of tool they use. If you want to harm someone with a gun, it's already illegal to harm someone, no matter what tool you use to do that. A gun is a tool, no different than anything else. As far as the courthouse, I don't know if you went to the rotunda this week, but during one of the events that was going on down there, they had court in session. They set up a metal detector, so you cannot get into the court. You have to go through a metal detector to get into the Supreme Court chambers when they're in session. It's the only time you ever see a metal detector in the Capitol. So that is protected. But yeah, my whole philosophy on guns is bad people do bad things. And if you're going to do something bad with a gun, you're going to find a way to get a gun, if that's your goal. But again, your end result, murder, assault, it's all illegal already. If you're going to do those illegal things, what do you care what the law says about how you obtain that gun? So that's just my overarching philosophy on guns.
I'll go back to the fact that we got some legislators, one in particular, that I just don't think a gun is a good thing. You know, frankly, on the debate floor, it gets pretty heated sometimes for some people. You don't take any of it personally. You shouldn't take any of it personally because it shouldn't be meant personally. But I've seen it used personally in my 7 years being there. So,
and if he wants to do something to harm you when you're angry, when he's angry, or whoever's angry,
he won't carry a gun in the Capitol. Let's not go there, though. He won't, because that is...
We get along great.
Yes.
Yeah.
We just don't agree on a lot of things. Some things.
What else do we want to talk about? Anyone want to talk about marijuana?
And-
Buffer strips. Buffer strips?
Oh, that's a good one.
That passed, let's see what number was
Yeah, we
that?
passed.
It passed the Senate handily, and I'm sure it'll pass the House pretty easily as well. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, but it really just sets up, it's a voluntary program that farmers can opt into if you get from 50 to 150 feet from a navigable stream, so it doesn't work like, I don't have any land that would fall under because all my creeks dry up in half the year. So, but fire steel would affect where farmers could come, they could plant that area 150 feet out to some kind of perennial grass, and then they could get a tax break on that, and then it would act as a filter from any runoff from their fields into the stream. So I think it's a good thing as long as it's voluntary. If it was mandatory, I probably would have supported it, but since it's voluntary, I'm in favor of it.
We passed it out of, I think, State Affairs very handily. I think it was unanimous. And I do know that there's a form, very simple form, that you would have to fill out each year. So any farmer or any person wanting to do it at least can opt in or opt out on an annual basis. I think the general feeling is that probably right out of the chute it won't be used a lot, but it's surely a step in the right direction. And we have a lot of farmers that are really interested in this sort of thing. So we'll see where it goes. I know that you can go online and find out which creeks and waterways are eligible for it.
Anybody want to talk about cannabis oil? I know there's some talk about that. Senate Bill 95, all it would do, it would add cannabis oil, which is the oil of the cannabis plant, which is not hallucinogenic, to the list of controlled substances, and it would exclude it from the definition of marijuana, which allows it to be used for some medical purposes and stuff like that. And we've had lots of discussion with some people here in our district about that. And it passed the Judiciary Committee in the Senate by a 7-0 vote. So I think that's promising. If we want to talk about marijuana, I'm not opposed to the research and study of marijuana for medical purposes. I am opposed to people growing it and smoking it for their own medical purposes, because what other drug do we take that you have to inhale to get the benefits out of that could be harmful to your lungs in other ways? So I'm all in favor of, let's do some research on this, let's find the good medical properties, because most of our drugs are plant-based in some way. So I think there's promise in this plant. We just got to get it broken away. Like any prescription drug can be abused. We just got to find the good in this and get it out and use it. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Phil Spanos, what's the status of that bill that would require, and also do you favor or oppose that would require abortion facilities in the state to give numbers or text numbers to those seeking abortions if they, to human, anti-human trafficking agencies. Where do you guys stand on that, and where is it in the legislature right now? Thank you.
I believe I'm trying to find the number, I can't find it, but we had that in Senate Health, and all it would do is require abortion agencies to provide, they would have to ask the person if they, I don't know if it was every person, but if they suspected it, are you being trafficked in some way? Because a lot of times they don't speak up on their own, but if they have to ask them and then provide them a number, even if they don't answer in the affirmative, here's a number you can call that will help you get out of the human trafficking situation. So I think that sailed through with, I don't think there's any opposition anywhere to it.
No, I think that one's through. In fact, we've had a couple of them. One that just passed out of state affairs that states that if you have been trafficked and you're 16 or under, you cannot be charged with prostitution. And that was a very interesting conversation because we had a father and as he told about the family, he said not all these girls are girls that are runaways or using drug. His daughter was one who fell into a crowd at school and was recruited by classmates. So these pimps actually hire recruiters that are in school, and those recruiters, your friends, 17, 18-year-old boys, typically, are recruiting both at the high school and the middle school. So I think, I'm hoping that we'll see a bill come back around that really addresses the recruiters, because that's one I wasn't aware of and it's fallen through the cracks. So I think, I'm hoping we'll see something there. And then we passed another one, and this went out of state affairs, and I don't recall that it's been on the floor yet either. But this one says that if you don't have to prove coercion, amongst other things, if you've got somebody 18 and under who is being trafficked. It's happened in the past, and that happened with this father's daughter. You had to prove coercion. And he said a lot of times these girls, they were promised great clothes and promised money and all of these things, and they don't look at it as coercion or as trafficking. So the bill will basically say you don't have to prove it, because what happens is if you have to prove it, it goes to court. A lot of times a year will elapse. Sometimes those girls are already back in being trafficked. They've left the state. So this will alleviate that. So I think we had some really good trafficking bills. Sioux Falls is known as Candyland for obvious reasons, because our laws were weak enough that if you're under 18, it wasn't a felony. I don't even remember all of the legal part of it. So we have a lot of trafficking that goes on in South Dakota. Sioux Falls is a mecca for it. So we need to do everything that we can there. Does anybody care about the SB 61, which was the nurse practitioner bill, allowing nurse practitioners to practice in their scope of practice? Maybe I'll tell you. Maybe I'll tell you. This caught a lot of, I had a lot of emails on this one, and I'm sure Josh did. It's a Senate bill we've already taken. The bill was, in South Dakota, you have to have, if you're a nurse practitioner, now remember, a nurse practitioner is an RN who's gone on and done it. She has a master's degree. She's generally got 3 more years of clinical type practice. So way beyond what a PA has. In South Dakota, you have to have a collaborating physician that you connect with every 3 years. Now, we had a legislator who is a nurse practitioner who's no longer in the legislature, and she just told me, she happened to be in the day we passed this, that she pays monthly a fee to a collaborating physician whom she speaks with once a year, or once every 3 years. She said he's a really nice guy, but she talks to him once every 3 years. She pays the money. Everything's good. In the upper northeast and northwest, again, many of them have never met the collaborating physician. So what this allows is that a nurse practitioner can practice in her scope of practice. She can't do stuff she's not supposed to. She can still collaborate. In Mitchell, we have many collaborating agreements, but where nurse practitioners work with physicians. But in areas where it's tougher, in mental health here, it's kind of a problem because the collaborating physician is from Pierre. So this bill passed really handily, and it was, the nurse practitioners will no longer need to do that. It's actually a savings of about $72,000. The biggest thing for me was there's a gal at Avera Marshall who comes over to help at the VA. She does it per diem. She does it on her weekends just because she wants to help vets. And because she wasn't doing anything outside of scope of practice, she was really just kind of directing these veterans where they needed to go next to receive the services. But she had to have a collaborating physician, which really upset the apple cart. And she had like 1 week to get it, and she had 23 appointments on the upcoming weekend. So I think it will really help with the veterans. And Senator Rounds in 2015 at Veterans Day made a big announcement promoting this kind of thing. No other states have it. It's been on the books for a long time. So that really ended up, the no's were basically coming from the physicians, and everybody else was on the other side of pass it. So
Kind of on that note, Senate Bill 136, which if you ever follow, is allowing the regulating and practice of licensed certified professional nurse midwives. And this has been an issue that if you followed politics in South Dakota for very long, it's been around for about 20
my 7 years.
My 7 years, but we were told in the community, this has been being worked on for 23 years, is allowing, because we already, it's legal to have your baby at home if you want. It's legal to have whoever you want there, family member, husband, grandma, son, daughter, whoever you want can be there to do that. But we criminalize the fact that a certified professional midwife comes in and out.
If you pay her.
If you pay her.
If you pay her.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense to us, and so it's been a struggle for a long time. And for the first time in 23 years, we passed a bill out of the Senate with a 29-6 vote, and it had to have a 2/3 majority because it sets up a new licensing board. And you know, most of the time those boards are funded with state dollars, but you know, one of the things that's being objected to is the money for that. Well, these ladies went out and raised the money to start this board on their own. So the money's already there to start the board. It won't cost the state anything, because this is something they believe strongly in. And I give them kudos. The amount of work that they laid in front of us at our committee hearing on this was just incredible. For 23 years, they've been working on this and meeting with every interested party that would work with them and discussing concerns. And this is how it should. It would be nice if every issue was done this way, when they would get all the parties together and work things out. The South Dakota Medical Association would never come to the table to meet with them. And so in the end, I mean, we were debating it on the floor, and at 3:40, I got an email from the Medical Association telling us to oppose it yet again. And at 3:50, we passed it. So it's kind of in legislative, you know, I've been there a long time, and when I was secretary for the Health and Human Services Committee, I remember hearing these bills way back in 2000, whatever. But it was kind of landmarking that we passed that bill this week. And for those ladies, it was a huge deal. So
It's a great deal for families, too, that want that choice.
But that was fun to see. When people cry in front of me, I tend to get teary-eyed, and there was a lot of teary eyes up in that gallery after we passed that bill.
Yeah,
So,
good. Anybody care about tech schools?
that was,
Just checking.
Governor signed that bill this week.
We have, we've got we passed the bill that actually establishes a board that will be made up of industry people that will govern and work with the technical institutes. What's happened in the past is they're part of K-12. Well, you've got a K-12 lobbyist, you have a Regental lobbyist, so the universities and K-12 have been represented, but the tech schools just fell between the cracks. And really, if you had a really good director, which we did here in Greg Von Wald, they would keep us informed. We'd end up lobbying basically for our tech schools. So this one will, I can't remember exactly how it works. I think every technical institute director gets to send in 4 picks. This board will involve industry people, and I bet you that Dr. Graves knows more about how that board is than I do, because I can't remember the details. There's no extra money involved because we already had 1.6 or 1.8 FTEs in the Department of Education that worked with the tech schools. That will no longer be needed. So that will move over to this director or executive director, I guess they're going to have, and a secretary. And then that board will have per diem. So it's a really good deal because our technical institutes, we've got to have industry people involved. They still remain part of the K-12, but we've talked forever about needing skilled labor, about having all the jobs but not being able to fill them. So this was a pretty big deal. I'm pretty excited. I know another bill passed out of House Education that will exempt post-secondary technical institutes from collective bargaining provisions. In other words, they don't have to unionize. And I remember when Mark Mickelson brought this one. It's a House bill. We'll see where it goes. And that problem really is over in Sioux Falls at that place. They've got a big mess over there at their technical institute. We and Watertown are just top notch.
Great, thank you very much. We do have time for additional questions, and so please come to the mic, and then after that, we'll hear from our legislators as well.
Jay Larson, I just have one question. Why does Senate Bill 55 still have legs?
Because it hasn't gotten to the House side yet. And I hope that's the rest of the story. Has it gone into a, I don't even know if it's come up. It's been, yeah. Okay, it's been rescheduled because we got to get rid of the House bills first, so it may even be rescheduled because the 22nd is Wednesday. So,
Yeah, it's been deferred twice.
yeah, at least. So I hope, Jay, that we can kill that better than a doorknob. I had somebody tried to convince me the other day of what the other side of that was, and I don't get it. Science is science is science.
Why do we elect school boards?
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
nobody wants to ask a question. I got like 100 of them. But I'll just give you one more. There's this issue, what we call the empty vehicle bills. There's one passed the Senate just, I think it was 2 weeks ago, recently, that said that South Dakota legislature is going to enhance South Dakota. That doesn't say how to do it. So these vehicle bills are basically empty as far as content, and then it gets passed over to the other chamber, and then eventually it gets hog-housed and passed. And there's arguments that say that these bills do not get enough public purview and opportunities for us to understand the content, to show up at a committee hearing and put our views out on that particular bill. And I guess there's like 10 or 12 of them in this current legislative session. So are you familiar with the issue?
Yeah, we've had vehicle bills have been around for as long as I've been there. The purpose is in the end, because in South Dakota you can only have, there has to be a word in the title that pertains to the bill, and you can only have one issue in a bill, unlike the federal government. You can't throw in pork here and there and everywhere. So you'll find some vehicle bills. Typically they'll deal with something like education, maybe health care, but something that in case as you get to the end and you need something, you've got a bill that you can hog-house and use it. You still get the debate. If you get down to the end, you have conference committees that meet, and you have the same opportunity there as you do in a regular House committee or Senate committee. I will say that I think in the past, and I just heard this the other day when talking to some people that have been around, there have been times when they've been misused, so you have to be really cautious that you don't misuse these vehicle bills. And so I think people are pretty alert and aware of that you don't want to abuse it because it's possible that it could be abused, and that's been brought up. So I think I think they're really good in that it does give you the opportunity when you get down to the end if you need it. This year there's no money, so what you might have is a vehicle bill that you would use and say, well, I want to give the technical institutes $500,000 to update their equipment, but obviously those kinds of things aren't going to happen this year because there's no money there to do it with. So I think you might not see too much in vehicle bills being used. You may, in terms of I am 22 and being able to address some of the issues in there, but I think we've got enough bills that are already addressing the main three issues. So I don't know, Sibby, I don't see them being used as much this year, but it's, you don't want to abuse them.
We killed one yesterday in Senate Ag, and all that the title was accommodate legislation regarding the Missouri River. And what I've been aware of in the Senate this year, as far as vehicle bill goes, we're watching closely the situation with the Dakota Access Pipeline up in North Dakota, and the protests that have been surrounding that, and now potential pollution if they don't get that site cleaned up when all that stuff comes down. And so that's what that vehicle bill was. That one was killed because they didn't need it, because I think there was another one, I can't remember the number on, but it gives the governor some authority to deal with protests in the National Guard and that aspect. So that's what it was for. When they're Holocaust, they are sent back to committee for hearings and that. So they're not like, oh, quick, put something in and let's pass it before the media has any idea or people have any idea what we're doing. They have hearings and stuff. The other side of the argument is, yes, you can suspend the rules and introduce a bill past deadlines. It's really 2 of one, half a dozen, 12 of one, half a dozen the other, whatever that saying is, but it accomplishes the same purpose. If we need a bill, we're still going to suspend the rules and introduce it. If we don't need it, like yesterday, we killed that one because Senator Cronin said that he thinks that the issue's been handled in other places. So
We've killed some on our side too.
most of them have been killed this year. There's only been one that I think is going to be used for giving the governor, with an annual review of the legislature, some certain powers regarding the National Guard in their dealing with protesters. If that North Dakota issue works its way down, probably more with the Keystone XL pipeline, if that starts coming through. So that's probably what that'll be used for. And then that'll be up every year to review those, whatever goes in that.
There's some concern about the protesters and the potential costs. So I think, I just read something briefly this morning, I didn't follow through on it, but I know the governor has some concerns and wants the ability to be able to assess costs where they're due.
Thank you. Additional questions?
Bill Spanos again. I know it's kind of early, but what do you foresee happening in Washington now that President Trump is, in the White House, and how everything will relate to South Dakota, getting federal funds and stuff like that?
That's another bunny trail, Phil, and that one, I have no idea.
That's really broad, and I don't know. Hopefully, I kind of worry with this killing of the TPP and the ag markets and what that means for our economy here. I have faith in his business ability and in negotiations and stuff like that. He's proven himself in his business life. So I hope with his appointment of Sonny Perdue as Secretary of Agriculture, and that gentleman does have an ag production background, and so he understands the importance of trade deals and stuff like that when it comes to that. We need these deals to help boost our ag economy with such depressed prices in all commodities. That affects us here, and that's why we're seeing our budget shortfall. So I hope he works with those countries that we need to have those trade deals with to
Do
keep
you
our.
think Terry Branstad being his choice for ambassador to China will help?
As I understand it, Governor Branstad's relationship with the president of China can't hurt when you're working with friends. I would hope better than an enemy.
Talk a little bit about the ag guy, because you had gone to a meeting in New Orleans.
Oh, right, yeah, right before
Is he
session.
from Georgia, and he's, as opposed to the Midwest.
Right before session started, I went with Majority Leader Qualm, because he was still serving as the chair of House Ag, and I was technically still his vice chair of House Ag. But we went to Louisiana where we met with it's the chairs and vice chairs of all the ag committees across the state, across the nation. And that's a really interesting. It's the only group that I decided I'm going to go to because I get the most out of that group. But we talked about Sonny Perdue, and his background is from Georgia. He's mainly a cotton and peanut farmer, but he has raised cattle and corn and soybeans where he has. I've never had the opportunity to meet the gentleman, but I have visited with many people who have. And the people here from South Dakota who have met him have high faith in him in being able to do a good job for our ag economy. He understands production agriculture from a farmer's point of view. He's been there, he's done it for years. So with his ability to do that side of things, plus understand the national global market that we're in as farmers, will be very helpful to us, I think. So.
Great. Any other questions?
Harlan Quinzer, and I'll get you back to South Dakota. There was a piece of legislation being considered that would take base taxes on actual use rather than best use practices. Ag.
Actual use versus production.
Right, thank you. I don't recall the number, but can you speak to the status of that? What impact that would have on local county budgets and what impact that would have on non-ag property?
Trying to find the number here. I'm trying to find the number here. I believe it was, and I know it was just being debated. I can speak broadly to it. As far as I understand it, it wouldn't have a huge impact on our side of the state, being more mostly tilled ground, very little rangeland. On the western side of the state, it would have a bigger impact in those counties where they have very little tilled ground and it's mostly range. As far as what kind of impact, I can't tell you right now, and I'm still looking for the bill to see where its current status is.
While you're looking, I'll give everybody a 2 or 3 minute warnings before we go to closing. So while they're looking, if you do have a question, certainly be ready for that when they are done answering this question. So.
If you don't have a number, we have to do text searches to find it, and then I have a whole list of things that might deal with it. If anyone else has a question, I'll keep looking while we ask. So. Or if you're not searching the right term, it doesn't bring it up either.
I'm giving up and I'm looking under Senate bills because there's fewer. I think that's what it was. We haven't talked about it yet.
Like I said, I know it was discussed briefly. I heard some people talking about it. So, you know what? Let me look at my emails because the Farm Bureau sent out something. They might have something in there.
Perhaps we can address that after the
Yeah, we can talk about it too. Yeah. So. Anything else?
Okay. Any last questions before we close? Seeing none, I'd like to. Ooh.
No, that's a different one. Sorry.
That's quite okay. While you're going there, we will start with the closing, and since Senator Klum started, we'll have Representative Tono Rosum go with the close first. So.
One thing that I just thought about, because Harlan and I talked about this last year, there was a conflict of interest in that dealt with boards. That's being fixed this year, hopefully. So we should, that turn, like bills, most all of them are going to have some unintended consequences unless they're vetted really well. And that was one that we thought was vetted, or the people doing it thought was vetted, and turned out in the end not to be. And if you have knowledge, you should be able to serve on state boards or boards in general, just because otherwise you're reinventing the wheel. Again, if you email, please put District 20 in the headline. I mean, or in the what? Subject line, thank you. Yeah, I need hints. Because otherwise, I mean, a lot of times I recognize the names, but sometimes people don't even sign it. And so there's so many emails flying at us that you want to respond to the people in your district, or I'll respond to people that I know from other parts of the state, but do that. Pay attention. We're still getting emails on Article 5 and some other things that have been long past. So if you have an opinion, if you go on the computer, go in and look and see where the bill's going and when it's going to be heard, so that you at least know whether it's water under the bridge already. It'll be a long day on Wednesday, but stay in touch with us if you have ideas or solutions or things that you want to talk about. Just let us know. We're down to 3 weeks, and hopefully we'll have Carson back here in another week and have our approps guy down on the wire when it counts. Thanks everybody for coming, and I'll say again what Josh has said before. Our District 20 people are great people. I am so grateful I am not in some of those other districts, because everybody's just very considerate and really has the best interest of our state at heart. And I remind legislators out there, we're the trustee for the entire state of South Dakota. So at least think broadly enough when you're trying to bring a constituent bill that maybe impacts one county. Thanks for being who you are.
I thank you for coming today too. These are always fun to just have a chat and less formalized. So I like that a lot. So anytime you have a question or something, email is the best thing. If you don't put it, I might not respond quite as quickly, but if I know it's from a local constituent, easily I do my best to respond as quick as I can. So I appreciate everyone coming today, and as we go forward, as we look for these dollars, you can guarantee that I'm going to do my best to at least protect our local service providers and stuff like that. That's really important to me. So thanks for coming.
And that's important to everybody. I remind Pam, everybody up there that you talk to really has our community service providers at the top of their list, because they're doing the job of the state, and we need to make sure that we're doing what we can with what we got.
As little as that is.
Well, Representative Roseman and Senator Klum, thank you for the time. Thanks for the wide-ranging discussion. All right. That's the last one. That was good. And that concludes the Cracker Barrel by the Mitchell Area Charitable, or the Mitchell Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for coming, and follow the bills online.